Hello and welcome to our tutorial for generating a 100% calibration for 10 sensors in Depthkit Studio in less than 10 minutes. I'm Corey and today I'm going to show you some strategies for speeding up your calibration. Before we get started, it's worth mentioning that it isn't always necessary to get a 100% calibration. Oftentimes, a calibration that reports an overall calibration quality of 70 to 80% works just fine as long as in the 3D viewport all of the sensors appear to line up properly. Only shoot for 100% when you're going into production and need the highest quality possible. Calibrating many sensors may seem daunting, especially if you haven't done it before, but using the tips and tricks in this video will bring down the amount of time needed to calibrate. Set yourself up for fast calibration by having everything you need ahead of time. This includes Depthkit Studio on a PC and sensors positioned, connected, and ready to calibrate. You'll also need many calibration charts. We'll discuss this more in a second. You'll need a stand, preferably a rolling one, and grip equipment to hold the charts. Finally, you'll need an iOS or Android device connected to a Wi-Fi network and loaded with the TouchOSC app and our TouchOSC template. One more thing that can be extremely helpful is a monitor in your capture volume. To prepare the calibration charts, print multiple pages of the PDF in our documentation and follow the printing guidelines also found in our documentation. Refer to the ID numbers in the corner to ensure that you're printing one of each page and that you're not printing duplicates. I'm using 6 pages of our 6-marker charts, but you can use up to all 16 pages available in the PDF. Reserve one chart for sampling the floor and mount the remaining charts at different heights from ankle height all the way up to head height. The rotation of the chart doesn't matter, but aim each individual chart at an average height of your sensors, which will make them less likely to be filtered out later. To set up the remote control, connect the Depthkit computer to the same network as your remote device. In TouchOSC's connection settings, make sure the IP and port information match those reported in Depthkit settings. So as you can see, I have all of my sensors set up, connected, and Depthkit is running and ready to go, as visible in my in-volume monitor that I'm looking at. And I also have 6 calibration charts printed out, each one a different page from the PDF available in our documentation. I also have the TouchOSC app running on my phone with the template available in our documentation. To confirm that TouchOSC is connected to Depthkit, I'm going to hit the Start Calibrating button on the remote control. Wait a couple of seconds for the pipeline to start up. And now that Depthkit is started, I can confirm that the remote control is connected to Depthkit. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. The first step is to get the floor sample, so I'm going to move the other charts out of view of all of the sensors. With the remaining chart, I'm going to locate the arrow in the top corner and make sure that's pointing in the Z-positive direction, or also known as straight back, or the direction that your audience will be facing by default. Place it on the floor in the center of the volume with that arrow pointing backwards. And now I'm going to hold the floor sample button. And because we only do this once, I'm going to do it for a good long time, about 10 seconds. Once that's done, you can see most of the sensors have been located in the approximately correct place. Some may not line up, but don't worry, we're going to fix that in a second. Now I'm going to bring the rolling stand back in and target 2 sensors. First, the hero sensor in front of me and the one in the corner, and I'm going to face the charts directly between those two. First, I'll get the charts as close as possible and then hit the link sampling button. And I only need to do this for about a second or two, and then move it back, get another sample, move it off to the side a little bit, get another sample, move it to the opposite side and get another sample. And I'm moving the charts to fill up a sort of wedge-shaped volume that both sensors can see. I'm still only targeting that hero sensor and the one in the corner. And you'll see in a second, when I move to the next set of sensors, I'll be facing the charts in a different direction. So these additional samples that are further back really fill out that wedge-shaped common volume between these 2 sensors. Once I'm done with that pair, I'm now targeting the next pair over. So I'll face the charts between the next 2 sensors and sample. Then move it back a little bit, sample again. Move it slightly off to the side, sample again. Move it to the other side, get another sample. and then further back in that wedge-shaped volume and continue sampling. Because we're getting so many samples, it's not necessary to hold that sampling button for more than a second or two. Next, I continue to make my way around each neighboring pair of sensors. You can see in the Depthkit interface that as I add these samples, the active links between sensors are starting to fill in. Even though the link tree doesn't look very intuitive right now, those links should sort themselves out as I collect more and more samples all the way around the volume. Ideally, getting to the point where the link tree is only composed of links between the sensors that are nearest to each other. You'll also notice that the metrics don't make a lot of sense yet. Don't worry about those for now. We'll take a look at them once we've collected all of our samples. I'm going to continue making my way around the ring of sensors and use the same strategy. I'm going to speed things up in editing here, but you can keep an eye on the stopwatch in the bottom right corner to make sure that I am in fact doing this quickly. Now that I've gotten samples for all of the sensors on one side of the volume, I'm going to now switch over to the other side of the volume, connecting all of the sensors that are next to each other except for the final two, which would close the loop. That's unnecessary, and we can dig into that a little later. To link any overhead sensors, you may need to modify your stand a little bit to aim the charts up to the midpoint between the lower ring of sensors and the overhead sensors. And I only need a few samples here to supplement the ones that I've already captured. I'll turn the stand around to get the rear overhead and link that to another sensor. And now we're done sampling, and within 10 minutes too. I'm going to leave the charts parked here in the center of the volume, and you can see we have 100% overall calibration quality already. But I'm going to use a little extra time to tune this calibration. As I navigate around the 3D viewport, I can see that these clusters of dots are all pretty well aligned, and I don't see any large red or yellow lines, indicating that there are no samples with a tremendous amount of error. I can also switch into infrared view and make sure that the squares on my calibration charts line up pretty well. Now these metrics are already pretty good. You can play around with these sliders and dial them in a little bit more towards precision to try to get that precision metric higher. Because we have so many samples here, these filters actually are making a pretty negligible difference on the precision metric. If I bring the 3D viewport camera overhead, I can see what my total link tree looks like. Some of these links don't make a lot of intuitive sense. Normally they're supposed to only be active between nearest neighbors, and some of these are stretching across the volume. So I can modify this by opening up the link between those two sensors and disabling it. This forces the other link to become active. This may not strictly be necessary, but is an option for tuning your calibration. I can also check all of the active links to make sure that each individual link has pretty good metrics. I'm looking for at least 80 or 90% precision. Going to stop here for a second and talk about the gap in the link tree on the left side. Depthkit only calculates enough links to connect each sensor once, so there will be a gap somewhere in your link tree. Here it's on the left side, and ideally it would be in the back of the volume, so you can control that to some degree either by not capturing samples that face the back of the volume or manually disabling the links. Finally, I'm going to switch into color texturing and walk back into the stage, then hold up just a couple of fingers and move them around the volume to make sure that every part of the volume that I intend to use is properly calibrated. If my fingers are reconstructed well, then that's a good calibration. And tuning brought us a little bit over 10 minutes, so sorry about that, but still, pretty good. From here, I can use my remote control to exit the calibration context, and then flip over to the Recording tab and hit Start Streaming to start the streaming pipeline. Now we're calibrated and streaming and ready to record. That is how you get a full Depthkit Studio calibration with 10 sensors very quickly. Be sure to post your best times, splits, and any other questions you have in our forums, and thanks for watching.